Welcome to AHDB Agronomy Week 2020. The live stream session will start shortly. Before we begin, we wanted to remind you of a few points of housekeeping. You're all on mute, so don't worry, we can't hear you. The session is scheduled to last between 1 and 1.5 hours, including questions. We want this session to be as interactive as possible, so please post your questions throughout the session using the live Q&A function in the Agronomy Week platform below. We're recording this session, so if you miss anything or would like to watch it again, it will be available on the AHDB YouTube channel and AHDB website. You can also come back and watch the recordings on the Agronomy Week platform for 3 months. At the end of the session, we'll provide you with unique BASIS and NROSO codes. Don't forget to complete the BASIS and NROSO forms using the relevant tabs on the platform. You have 2 weeks after the live session to register for your points. Join in the conversation online. Follow AHDB_cereals and AHDB_potatoes on Twitter and use the hashtag AgronomyWeek. If you have any issues with the conference platform, there are digital event FAQs in the menu on the left-hand side. You can use the Help tab to contact the team if you experience any technical problems during the week. We hope that you enjoy Agronomy Week 2020. Thanks for joining us. Your session will now start.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the third day of AHDB's Agronomy Week 2020, and also welcome to the first day of the Agronomists Induction sessions focusing on potatoes. I'm Antonia Walker, and I'm Senior Knowledge Transfer Manager for Potatoes. This induction session will feature our Knowledge Exchange Managers Amber Barton, David Wilson, who will open the session, and we'll be covering a variety of topics, including an overview of AHDB potatoes, our spot farms, and the potato operating environment. They will then move on to markets influencing factors, and then ending with cost benefits and returns. Alex Wade will then take over and give you an insight into the tools that AHDB potatoes have developed for the industry. I hope you enjoyed this session, and so now I will hand you over to Amber, David and Alex to take you through their presentations.
Welcome along, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Wilson. I'm the Knowledge Exchange Manager for East Anglia and the South East. And joining me, I have my colleague Amber Barton, who's the Knowledge Exchange Manager for the East Midlands. Today, we're going to give you a run through all about AHDB, AHDB potatoes, and the industry. Potatoes is quite a niche crop, and also there's lots of agronomists out there, lots of aspiring agronomists on this call, I'm sure, but not everyone's involved in potatoes. It's a bit like livestock. It's quite a lifestyle choice. If we look at the cropping year for potatoes, it's quite involved. At this time of year, so we're here in December, a lot of people are already taking delivery of seed for next year. Seeds beginning to be trayed up and chitted in some cases. Then through the winter, groundwork will be being done, destoning, planting, getting the fields ready for the crop. Then the crop will be planted. March through to September, the crop's actively growing. That's when the real agronomic advice is needed. Well, the chemical input certainly. Then as early as May, early crops can be being harvested. That'll carry on right through into the summer, and then main crop goes from August through into late November. Certainly in a year like this, a lot of crop is sold straight off the field, but a huge proportion of it is put into store. So from even as early as June, right through till in some cases June, August the following year, crop is stored. So there's a huge amount of work goes on right throughout the season. And there's quite a lot of involvement. So to make it even more complicated, we have this extremely complicated diagram that I don't apologise for it being hard to read, because that's almost the point of it. That not belittling cereals at all, but in the world of cereals, there's almost less people involved in the chain. You buy your seed, you grow it, you either put it in your shed or you sell the grain to a merchant at the end, and that's kind of it done. There's not as much involvement from HDB all the way through, whereas in the potato industry, we start out with the seed growers, and AHDB is heavily involved in the R&D level with seed. We'll come on to that later with some of the work on our spot farms. We also have an exports team headed up by Patrick Hughes, looking at both imports and exports of potatoes, again, seed potatoes, ware potatoes. With Brexit looming on us, there's some real challenges there ahead. In addition to that, we do a lot of work around inputs and inputs and supplies for ware growers. We will cover more of that later in this presentation. That's a lot of work done on our spot farms. We then also get involved with the end users, the processors, the packers, wholesalers, chip shops. Huge variety of different ways of marketing these potatoes. We get involved in that. And then the final thing we're involved in is the consumers. We have a consumers insight team that we have Bud the Spud, our marketing campaign that some of you may have seen, where we're really trying to promote potatoes as healthy eating and help the industry market its wares. So that's a quick run through of the very sort of complicated industry, but thinking more about where the crop is grown. There's two maps here. The map on the left is the main ware producing areas, and the map on the right are the seed producing areas. And you'll see a lot of dark green up in Scotland, where a large proportion of seed is grown, and that's due to the altitude and, in theory, reduced pressure from aphids. But it's quite a coastal crop. Looking at that, you have obviously pockets in Scotland, Lincolnshire, East Anglia, Cornwall, the Midlands. To drill down further, to put some percentages on it, we've ruthlessly chopped Scotland off the top. A lot of that area is seed, so 22% of the area is up in Scotland. But depending where you are around the country, you can look at this map and hopefully see how many potatoes are grown in your area. The areas I'm responsible for are East Anglia, so 28% of the crop, and the southeast, only 2%. But you have to remember that there's a big old thing called London in the middle of there. So huge variety across the areas, but there's big pockets depending where you are. So that's a quick summary of the areas. I'll now pass over to my colleague Amber, who will go into a bit more detail about what's actually grown in these areas.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so I've just pulled off this graph from our potato data centre, which is basically where our MI team put all of the potato-specific stats that we produce. So if you're interested in having a look, the Potato Data Centre is definitely a place to go and have a look through and browse the charts that we've got. But basically, I've put here the potato area by region, and then I've colour categorised it by sector as well, so that you can see where you're operating in the country, exactly what sorts of potatoes are grown with you. So as you can see from this, as David said, east of England is by far the biggest potato producing area in the country. And the majority of that is for the packing industry, but there's also a large proportion of processing and fresh chipping potatoes grown there. The next largest is Scotland, which is pretty much split 50-50 between packing potatoes and seed potatoes. And then you've got sort of the West Midlands and Wales, East Midlands and Yorkshire and Humber of similar sizes. East Midlands, which is my region, is mostly packing, but with quite a bit of processing as well. Yorkshire and Humber, mostly processing with a bit of packing and quite a bit of seed. And then Wales and West Midlands is mostly processing. And then the other areas are sort of split quite evenly between the others. So can we move to the next slide, please, David?
Sorry, trying. There we go.
Perfect. So this is another one. This is an interesting one to have a look at because it helps you sort of understand where the industries come from. So on this graph, we've got the area grown on the left-hand axis, and then on the right-hand axis, we've got the number of growers. So the green bars there are showing you the area grown over the last 60 years. So you can see that it's decreased quite dramatically over that time, but over the last sort of 10-20 years it's plateaued quite a bit. So it was looking at sort of 250,000 hectares grown back in the 60s and 70s, and now we're sort of half of that. We're 117,000 this year. and the number fluctuates, I guess, between 110 and 120 depending on the year. The blue line in this graph is even more telling, and this is the number of growers that we have. So we've gone from having nearly 75,000 growers 60 years ago to just having 1,700-ish around that at the moment. So that's obviously a combination of things. So it's yield increases, which have allowed for the same amount of crop to be grown, but on less land. But also growers getting a lot bigger. The average amount of land per grower has increased dramatically over that time period. Next slide, please, David. So just moving on to the varieties themselves. Here we've got the top 10 varieties. We do this every year. So our MI team look at area in lots of different ways, and they also do this, which is the area by variety. This comes out usually around August. And basically we do a top 50, what the top 50 varieties are every year. And as you can see from this, the top 2 varieties, Maris Piper and Marquise, have been there for forever, or at least for a very, very, very long time. So Maris Piper is usually, sort of around 15% of the total area grown. This year, we've seen the biggest decrease in Maris Piper, I think probably ever. It's gone down about 13%, and I guess this is mostly because of the COVID situation. So whether or not we see that increase significantly again next year once markets are back up and open, touch wood, hopefully. The other one, Marquise, obviously it's the grower's favourite, I guess. You'd say Maris Piper is the housewife's favourite, Marquise is the grower's favourite. And then after that, we've had quite a bit of movement the last few years. And I guess from this side, ideally in 5 or 10 years' time, I would like to start seeing some of the newer varieties with resistance to PCN or blight resistance coming into that. There's lots of new varieties coming up, which is really promising. It would be great to start seeing more of those making their way into the top 10. Next slide, please. So the next one is an interesting one. This is looking at what they're worth. So this is using our WAPS free buy prices, which is the WAPS is the weekly average price survey that we produce. The yellow line is 2018, and you can obviously see that was tracking reasonably high. The green line is 2019, and the blue line is this year. The black line that I've put in is the 5-year average, so the average price per week from the last 5 years as we've gone along. And you can just see the spread that we've got, and this really shows the volatility in the potato market. So if you're trying to get into the brain of a potato farmer, you can start seeing what sort of environment they're operating in. They're trying to grow a crop and make a profit every single year, but actually the prices that they're getting returned are vastly different year on year. Next slide, please. This one's a bit complicated, and I don't expect you to look at it and take in the detail, but this basically shows you the relationship between prices 1 year and planting the next year. And as you can see, I think this is the best graph to show the volatility in the potato market. 1 year the prices are high, the next year planting goes up, the next year prices go down. Having said that, the last 3 or 4 years have been unprecedented because of the weather situation that we've had, and with COVID it's all sort of blown out the water, which has made it even more volatile. But it's just to give you a flavour of sort of how uncertain, I guess, working in potatoes is. And I've always heard it be called sort of like a gambler's crop. You wouldn't necessarily get into potatoes if you didn't have an appetite for a bit of volatility, I guess would be the best way to say it. Next slide, please, David.
So yeah, that's back to me. Yeah, that's, I always find that fascinating, Amber, the stuff going on behind the scenes in the market. And I come from a technical background and always tend to be drawn that way, but there's a lot more to it in potato production, and this actually illustrates that. So this is a pie chart I've got of costs, and I'm picking out the bit that agronomists would be interested in, the bit where you can sell inputs into the farm and advise. So herbicides, some people say it's a high figure, it's pounds per hectare, but in some cases we're combining desiccant with herbicide. You've got foliar insecticides, tuber treatments, in-furrow fungicides, and foliar fungicides. The peachy, pink, yellow, depending on the colour of your screen bar at the bottom, that's actually nematicides, and that's sort of average price that I haven't included. Although it's on this slide, I haven't included the next point because not everyone has to use a nematicide. But if you just focus on the bits that can go in a sprayer, the herbicides, the insecticides, etc., what sort of percentage of the total cost would everyone expect that to be? I know I'm asking a room that can't reply, but just to put that into context, it's actually less than 6% of the total cost of growing a ton of potatoes comes from the bolt and brace, nuts and bolts of agronomic inputs. There's huge amounts in there. Machinery, for example, counts for 22% of the cost of growing a ton of potatoes. Potato machinery is rising very quickly in cost. Land rent at a moderate fee can be up to 9% of your total cost. And one of the biggest forgotten parts is storage, actually, that comes in at over 20% of the cost. Labour coming in at 13% and nematicide at 5%. But it just goes to show that in order to be a great agronomist or potato farmer, it's more than just the chemical inputs you can put in. It's decision making from seed selection that I touched on earlier, from October through till from now on, that there'll be field selection happening, fields being tested for potato cyst nematode, matching the right variety with the soil type, with the end use, with the store. The interesting one is, since I presented this similar chart last year, the sprout control, the blue button around 10 o'clock, half 9, 10 o'clock on the chart, has almost tripled in cost. And that's a bit of a guesstimate. We've lost CIPC for sprout control, and people having to find alternative ways of doing it, and that is massively driving the cost up. So this is most definitely worst case scenario, belt and braces, everything thrown in there, but it's over £9,000 a hectare for the total costs, and say less than 6% of that is ag chem inputs. One thing we do have, and not want to steal any of my colleague Alex's thunder, we have Farm Bench at AHDB, which is a great way of tracking your costs on the farm, your inputs, your variable costs, your fixed costs, and then also seeing how you perform, how you benchmark against others growing the same crop. That can be found by just typing Farm Bench into your browser or on our website, but I say Alex will cover a lot of these bits later. So having sort of depressed you a bit with the volatility in the market and the increase in costs, part of you would think, well, actually, over the years, price would increase. But actually, this is another fantastic bit of work by the MI team, where what we've done here is going back to the 70s, we've indexed the cost of a ton of potatoes, the price for a ton of potatoes to today's money. So in a lot of you will have heard from the droughts previously of the summer of 76 when it was really dry, and that's when potato prices went through the roof. But I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong later, Amber, it was £14 a tonne back in the old money, but that equates to just under about £1,000 a tonne in today's money. But you can see as we go along from the 70s to 2019, the prices actually stayed pretty flat, indexed to today's money. So input costs are going up, but the return isn't really changing. So that's a huge challenge that we have on research and advisory side, and you guys will have on growers to make it a viable crop for growers to produce. Another challenge we face, sorry to be doom and gloom, is rainfall. And I've added the word rotation in there as well, because the average rotation on a potato farm is still only 5.6 years. A lot of people would want to be in a 6-year rotation. And it'll take you several years in the potato industry on the agronomy side to see 2 years the same. I'll be very surprised if some of the longest standing potato agronomists have ever seen 2 years the same. But if you look at the two maps on the left and in the middle here, we have 2012 and 2018. So that's a 6-year rotation. So you could have been in a field in 2012 and it's the wettest harvest you ever had, and the crop didn't perform due to moisture. And then 2018, you went back into the same field, and you had probably another one of the worst yields you've ever had because you just didn't get the rainfall, and it was the hottest, driest summer we've ever had. And then you fast forward to 2020, and this was from the summer. Obviously, had a lot of rain since then, but it wasn't as bad as 2012. Although I know a lot of people this year have struggled to get crop out where they didn't in previous years. But that's the one thing we have is, again, in the cereal world, yields can fluctuate by a ton or two a hectare, which is still can be up to 20%, but you can get 50% plus swings in potato yield if the climatic conditions don't go in your favour. So these are some of the challenges we have, and we do then try to see if we can put research into practice. So I'll now hand back to my colleague Amber again, just for a bit on our spot farms.
Brilliant. Yeah. So our spot farms are, I would say, probably one of the best ways we've got of getting the research that we do to back out, I guess, to you guys as agronomists, but to growers, to the rest of industry. We've got 3 spot farms at the moment, but we have got a new Spot West coming online, and I believe it's going to be announced later this week on our new Facebook page. So look out for that and get yourself signed up to that. So the spot farms we've got the spot farm that I look after, Spot North, which is RJ and AE Godfrey in North Lincolnshire. We sort of cycle between 2 sites. This year we'll be going back to Eastoft, which is sort of over towards Goole, Crowell, just off the M180, easy to get to, great farm, come visit us. The next one we've got is James Foskett Farms down in Suffolk. I probably said the wrong county. David will tell me if I have. It's his farm. He looks after it. And then we've got Milton of Mathers Farm up in Scotland, which Claire Hodge looks after. So Alex Wade, who's going to talk to you in a bit, he's going to look after the new Spot West as well over in the West. So just as a taster, some of the topics that we've been looking at, PCN, trigger finger, PCN, herbicides, wireworm, irrigation and moisture monitoring, viruses and desiccation. And we also look at storage, loss of actives and labour as well. So, you know, if you've got a topic that you think we'll be interested in, our steering groups meet quite regularly. We're meeting at the moment to discuss trials for the coming year. So if you've got any ideas, just send them over to us, and we can always float them to the steering groups to see what they think. Now you can move on, David.
Apologies.
So as I said, this is Jim Reed. He is our host at Milton of Mathers Farm up in Scotland. And I'm just going to play a few videos now, because I think the best way to introduce our spot farms is to let them introduce themselves. So Ben, if you wouldn't mind playing the Spot Scotland video, please.
We farm around 285 hectares altogether, mixed arable with wheat, oilseed rape, potatoes obviously, and malt and barley being the other main crop that we grow. So we're very much a family business, growing from originally 20 hectares to where we are now, between this year 75 or 80 hectares is our normal seed potato production. Potatoes are all about attention to detail, and it's every detail in that growing season that counts. We have our own ambient store at Benham, where we can store up to 1,800 tonnes, but all the varieties that are graded early go straight into McCain's own store at harvest.
Scottish Agronomy are working with McCain Potatoes and Jim Reed, along with AHDB, to work sustainably at looking for solutions for the potato seed growers in Scotland.
The spot farm this year is seed, where the previous spot farm was ware. So, you know, Scotland is a seed producing country, and we have the protected status. We want to make sure we keep it. And AHDB are at the forefront of keeping everybody informed on what we're doing.
The project is running over 4 years. We've got 3 pillars in this first year, looking at desiccation. Second pillar, looking at PCN sustainable management, and the third pillar is looking at sustainable management of potivirus in potato seed crops, particularly looking at the challenge of resistant aphids, integrating that with integrated pest management. We are looking at the relationship between the aphid species being caught in the traps and the parasitoids and parasitoid aphids being caught in the traps and nearby as well.
At the end of the 4 years, I would like to think that we've got a better understanding on PCN. We had to change our approach to weed control this year, often with a 2-spray programme rather than 1, because we had these desperately dry conditions this year. Again, it's, you know, just when you think you got it right, you lose what you had and you've got to start learning all over again. Scotland has an important role to play in supplying clean seed potato.
By the end of the project, we hope that we will have actionable data for farmers to take back onto their own farms. We'll be demonstrating here interactions with home desiccation. We just had the withdrawal of dicot last year, and we're looking at new techniques in order to control vigorous home canopy. We've got sustainable IPM strategies for controlling pottyvirus, and we're looking at sustainable strategies for PCN. And really we're talking about integrating as much as possible integrated pest and disease management into the programmes of the future for farmers.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Jim. So the next one, as I've said, is Spot North. This is the spot farm that I look after, and I'm now going to let my hosts, Alex Godfrey and Will Gagg, introduce you to their farm. Spot North.
I'm Alex Godfrey. I'm a 4th generation Lincolnshire farmer and potato grower. We trade as RJ and AE Godfrey. We're always interested in what we can do better when it comes to growing potatoes, and I thought this was a fantastic opportunity to see some of the best developments in the potato industry at the moment applied on our farm. What we're looking to achieve over the course of the Strategic Farm Programme is to improve the way we grow potatoes. So we haven't set ourselves a defined target on any particular measure. I'd be happy to see progress in any direction as it comes.
There are many challenges growing on both these soil types, both the wold and the silt. On the wold land we get some fantastic yields, but where we do struggle is sometimes on the quality long-term in store. We generally find the potato loses its bloom after about March. Down the silts, we generally get a fantastic skin finish which will stay throughout the season. Sometimes the lifting conditions and the challenges of the silt land holding moisture in the soil can be tricky.
We're keen to look at some nutrition trials, and with the work we're doing on farm, we're always keen to learn what we can do better. Over the last couple of years we've been trying more tailored nutrition programmes, and that's something we're keen to develop. In addition, we'd like to look at irrigation and also common scab control. We're in the packing market, so quality of skin finish is a major concern to us. We want to produce a potato that's good enough quality for our customers, the packers, and to do that we need to make sure those skins are spot on.
By the end of the programme, if we could actually achieve better quality in store to our customers, I'll be very happy. If we can actually fine-tune these small amounts, if we can gain by 1%, another percent slowly along the lines, it can only be a positive thing, both for us and the industry.
We're really looking forward to working with other growers locally and further afield. I think there's some great knowledge out there in the industry that we'd like to share. We're happy to welcome people here and show them what we're doing, and in turn we hope we'll learn from some good ideas that other people have as well. We're looking forward to sharing what we do and hopefully learning some good ideas that other people have got as well.
Yeah, so that's Spot North, and then as previously mentioned, I look after East Anglia and South East, and Spot East. We have a unfortunate farmers, James Foskett Farms, and that they went live in 2020, and due to COVID restrictions, they haven't had anyone able to come and look at the trials. Foskett Farms is the red dot on the Suffolk coast. The blue pin in the middle is Elvedon Estate. Elvedon Farms were our spot host for several years, carrying out a huge amount of trials and learning bits and pieces. But rather than me telling you more about James Foskett Farms, if we now play video 3, you can hear from Mike, the man himself.
I'm Mike Shapland. I'm the farm manager for James Foskett Farms, and we're based just north of Woodbridge in East Suffolk. We crop about 1,300 hectares annually, and that's up and down the East Suffolk coast predominantly. So we're cropping light sandy loam, so about 400 hectares of potatoes grown annually, and then we're also growing sugar beet, combinable crops and vining peas, and in addition to that we have 200 hectares of organic land across 4 sites, and we're growing a range of different organic vegetables as well. On the potato side of the business, then predominantly we're growing pre-packed potatoes for packing customers, supplying UK multiple supermarket retailers. In addition to that, we grow about 70 hectares of certified seed, some of which comes back into our own business, but some is marketed outside the business. In terms of organic vegetables, then that's to a range of customers, so multiple retailers, but also the box schemes, organic box schemes are major customers of ours. We offered to become the Spot East host last season, and really the drive behind that was we'd seen some of the really good work that Elvedon and Andrew and his team had done over the previous years, and thought that it was a very worthwhile and very scientifically grounded but also industry usable way of trialling relevant information for potatoes. So we're keen to take that on. I think, being fairly selfish, we were keen to have trials information based on our own crops and our own soils in our own fields. We're just in the infancy, and obviously coronavirus has scuppered our plans in terms of being able to bring people here. What my ambitions for it really are to base it on really good sound scientific trials, but also to make as much of it demonstrable as possible, so that when people come out they can really, have a look, and hopefully that'll stimulate some debate and some challenge and give people some ideas, and that's my main targets for it really. And the other thing is, with it being a long-term project, is it gives us the opportunity to look at some of the longer-term rotational challenges of growing potatoes, particularly things like soil-borne pests, wireworm, potato cyst nematode. We're in an area here that's been growing potatoes quite intensively for a long period, and managing those pests in a longer-term, more integrated way is something that's going to be real advantage for us to look at within Spot Farm.
So yeah, that was an insight into our 3 Spot farms. The one thing Mike also mentioned there at the end of the video is, if any of you are familiar with our strategic cereal farms, there's a lot of quick measurements can be made with the cereal rotation being shorter. You can check things before and after a crop and second wheats, etc. When we're looking at a 1 in 6 rotation, we're now on a 6-year rolling sort of agreement with Spot Host to try and get 1 rotation. But if you're looking at improving organic matter for a crop, you almost need to start 5 years before you're going to put that crop in to see if there's a benefit. So we've got some real long-term projects, and Amber mentioned the steering groups we have. We have local agronomists and farmers, and sometimes people from the industry, the packers and processors on the steering groups as well, to work together. So it's a whole industry approach that we're looking at. But sometimes we need to almost transport ourselves into the future to understand what we need doing in 2 or 3 years' time to be able to do a trial and get the ball rolling. So the trials you see in the ground are only a very small part of what's actually happening. So if I could ask Amber to join me back as well. We did some brainstorming.
Yeah, I guess this is our call for you guys to, make Spot Farms a priority. We had to think about it and thought these are sort of our top points why you'd come to our Spot Farm events.
Because often people can be put off slightly by research, and Alex will come on to it later. That it's putting research into practice. The whole team are very passionate about potato production in general, and we want it to be accessible for agronomists, growers alike, and we want people to be able to go home and try the things they're seeing. We jokingly talk about a Blue Peter style sheet of a take home and try. So for example, we've done desiccation trials over recent years, and what we had planned to do for this year, if we could have got people in the field, was give you using our colleagues in AHDB, an on-farm sort of trial guide on how you could do alternative tram lines, looking at the 2 products most likely to show you a difference and really make it work for you on farm. and we are completely impartial in the research we do. There's no commercial edge. My background is from the chemical industry, and I'm very aware that you can have the best technical story in the world, but it's got to be commercially viable for all as well to really get traction. Where the work we're doing is purely looking at stuff on a efficacy basis. So full independent research.
Yeah, so I would say our spot farms aren't just for farmers. We really appreciate agronomists coming along. Not only is it a great networking opportunity for you guys because they reach a lot of farmers in the local area, but we appreciate having that two-way feedback as well and that discussion at the events. That's what makes the events so good. Having our speakers there, so we have a lot of technical speakers from other organisations come in and talk about the trials that they're doing. But having that conversation with agronomists who are on the fields, in the fields, knowing exactly what's going on, I think is one of the bits that really helps to make the event so special. So just to list out the bits that we've put there. So as I said, networking, independent research, because we're not associated or affiliated with any commercial organisations. Learning and improving on your technical knowledge. Obviously, we have basis and NROSO points, so we have many of those. You can collect all of yours probably in a year by coming to our events, and then we usually put a bit of food on as well. So that's, I guess, come to our events.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic events, and you hit the nail on the head there, Amber. When as agronomists and advisors, growers, you're seeing a variety of different crops and different soil types, and we can learn from you as much as you can learn from us. And exchange is a big part of what we do. We do try, and some trials we've got planned for next year, looking at, if we can, sort of virus expression in different varieties. The older varieties that Amber showed in the top 10 varieties have been around for years, and people are quite aware of how they express virus and various other things. The newer ones less so, and it's work that perhaps no one else in the industry would do. A breeder is not really going to want to do it. The ag chem companies, again, not so much, and perhaps not even distribution. So that's where we can really claim that space our own and make it work. So keep an eye out on our events page. A lot of the work we've done, we've managed to get videos this year, and also in January we will be having a Spot Farm results week, I think it's looking like. So do keep an eye out for that. But yeah, thank you very much, Amber, for keeping me right. Spot on with it being Suffolk. But now we will hand over to our colleague Alex Wade, who's going to run through some of the tools that we also provide.
Lovely job. Yeah. Let's get up the presentation. Can you all see that okay? So hello and good morning to everyone. Thank you, David and Amber, for your presentation. It's very interesting. I'm going to talk to you about the tools available from AHDB as a young agronomist. So me personally, I've experienced, just starting out. I'm not sure entirely what to do or what to recommend, but hopefully from this presentation today, you can take away what I personally find the best 6 tools that AHDB can offer from a potatoes point of view. So as I said, and you might have read, my name is Alex Wade. I've recently taken over as Knowledge Exchange Manager in the West Midlands, South West and Wales for AHDB Potatoes. So previous to this, I worked as an agronomist, spray contractor, field trials officer at Harper Adams, and then also did a year stint as a fertiliser sales rep to focus on the fertiliser side before getting a job here at AHDB. So I completed my basis and facts a few years ago and thought, that was that. But upon getting into my agronomy role, I realised it was a bit of a minefield with various different sources of information saying different things. So hopefully from today's presentation and the information you obtain over this week, it'll give you a clearer picture, understand some topics more in depth, but also equip you with the tools to be more efficient. So without further ado, so you're probably aware of some of the tools AHDB has to offer as a young agronomist through all your previous training and learning and all that stuff. But I feel there's quite a few tools that people should know about that aren't talked enough about. So we have around 20 different tools available. Now, some of these guides, training, calculators, and some are even people. But you'll be pleased to hear I'm not going to rumble on through them all. But as explained, I'm going to pick my top 6 agronomists should pay attention to. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll also list all available tools. So if you want to take a picture or write them down, and then as you progress as an agronomist or come across certain topics, or you're bored at home and fed up of writing recommendations, you can dive into a new tool. So no particular order. I'm going to start off with one you should all be familiar about, which is RB209. In particular, Section 1, which is the principles of nutrient management and fertilizer use. Section 2, which is organic materials. And then Section 5, which is potatoes. So I'm sure you're all aware the Nutrient Management Guide provides guidelines for crop nutrient requirements and the nutrient content of organic materials. Now, it's vital for fertilizer applications and being compliant with fertilizer legislation, but also to get the best out of the crop. And yeah, just remember, you've got to be FACTS qualified to advise growers on fertilizer. It's also available in an app form from your phone, which is particularly handy, I found, when walking crops. Have a look how much fert your customer has applied, pull out the app and make sure they're compliant. Practice makes perfect. So the more you familiarize yourself with the app in field situations, the more you're going to learn and remember. So, questions about fertilizer become snappy and straight to the point, and you know what you're talking about. So there will be a revised edition coming out in, I believe, January 2021. So please all make a note to get that and have a look at the specific changes involved. So next up we have the storage tools. So potato storage is a key element of the potato industry. With the loss of recent sprout suppression CIPC, store management must be more careful and more attention must be paid. But it's often thought particularly, not particularly an agronomist's position to be recommending store advice, as people sort of tend to shy away from it. However, it can be very handy and sort of put you above the competition if you can understand the basic principles, where your customers could be losing money. And I guess finally, prevent blame thrown at you for breakdown in storage because you haven't put the correct tube of blight protection on. So first up is the Store Manager's Guide. This provides the latest data on airflow analysis, respiration rates, sprout suppression, disease identification, condensation control, storage temperatures, pull down rates, and more. So, with this one, I'd recommend all agronomists to read it, familiarize themselves with it, and then put it into practice, really. So when you're walking a store, look at the airflow system, have a look at the temperature gauge. If it's boxes, have a look through the gap, see if there's any breakdown, of spuds and moisture. It all helps, and you can feed that back to your customers. Next up, we have the Storage Hub, which is sort of similar to the Store Manager's Guide, but it's found on the AHDB Potatoes website. And it contains updated access, to potato storage information concerning ongoing research, the best practice, sprout suppression, disease and defects, and storage systems as well. So just on the right there, that's an image from the website. We've got sprout suppression, potato storage best practice, about Sutton Bridge, and all sorts of updated stuff. And just one thing to note there is contact the expert. So there's an advice line for all levy payers where they can just phone up if you've got any queries on your store and get some advice. So that's a really good, useful tool. Next up, which is part of the storage tools, is potato disease and defects tool. So this is essentially a clear image gallery where you can identify the symptoms caused by fungal-like organisms and sort of bacteria that cause the disease in potato tubers. So some of these symptoms could be present at harvest. Some are present at harvest, some spread through the crop in store, and some will only develop significantly in the store. So it's a good tool to use on farm and in field. Dig a few spuds pre-harvest, have a look at what condition they're in, any significant volume of rots in there, have a look what the rot is, what you think it is, and then that will give you a good indication of how they will last in the store, and what fields to keep an eye on. So this is an online based service, as you can see on the right. That's on the AHDB website, and a screenshot from there itself. However, for ease and convenience, if you don't have signal or anything like that, you can request this poster, which is free of charge. You can put it up in your bedroom, or keep in the car, or order one for your growers to put up in the tea room of the store. So, and as you can see, it's lovely clear images, and really handy to identify the diseases and defects. So moving on from this, we have the potato variety database. Now, this database provides data on GB certified potato varieties that have undergone the sort of the independent resistant testing for the key pests and diseases. Now, the ones that haven't undergone that independent resistant testing are clearly marked. But just some of the things you can do on this. You can search for varieties by name or characteristic. You can compare data for varieties that have undergone the independent testing and ones that have not undergone the independent testing. Obtain grower, breeder, and breeder's agent contact details. So that's a pretty key one, because it's sometimes quite hard to get hold of the breeders. See lists of varieties, the images. Learn about the advantages of British seed potatoes and things like the seed classification scheme. And then obviously sort of dormancy, dry matter, cooking type, determinancy, and all those sorts of things. So I think this one's important, because if your grower has the flexibility of choosing within reason his varieties, if you've previously had a big problem with, let's say, blackleg, just as an example, you obviously would look at varieties with a higher resistance rating, but with similar skin, flesh, and shape, depending on your market. Now, I'm very aware it's very dependent on market, but instead of opting for the same old variety, if you've got the flexibility, push your grower to take a look at some of these. And just a note there, there is a new potato variety comparison tool, which is similar to the potato variety database, which is being launched this week. And I believe you have a session on it tomorrow, so I won't go into it too much, but make sure you're listening to that webinar. And the images on the page here are screenshots taken from the website, so you can obtain a lot of useful information on resistance and then the characteristics of the variety. And if you do have to plant a certain variety, you can prepare for problems that might happen. If you've got high blight, bad blight resistance on there, you'll know to potentially look out for it and bulk up your spray programs. So next up is the fight against blight. So as we all know, the main disease of potatoes is potato blight. It spreads quickly through the crop, and a typical blight pressure season can cost the industry 55 million a year. So with this big impact on the industry, it's important to respond quickly and raise awareness to the changing strains. So as part of the research, there's the fight against blight, as just mentioned, which has been reporting on blight alerts for the past 10 years. There's an image on the right there of an idea the database looks like of where the instance occurs. So it allows you to find all the recorded instances of blight across the UK, and you can change the date range, which will allow you to see when the blight was reported across the season. Now, it's completed on a voluntary basis by the team of Blight Scouts, which are drawn from members of the industry who are routinely walking potato fields during the season, aka you guys. So I'm going to use this time to plug a recruitment for Blight Scouts. So as mentioned, they're members of the industry who are walking the potato fields during the season. And all you have to do is, if you see blight in the field you're walking, you take samples of the blight, fill in a quick form, and send it to the James Hutton Institute, and then you get your results back in, I think it's around 2 days, and then you know what strain of blight you have. Therefore, knowing what fungicides to use, not to use, and it gets uploaded to that map anonymously, may I add. So people in the surrounding area know what strains of blight are around and how to adapt. If you like any more information on this, I guess visit the Fight Against the Blight website, or please feel free to contact your local KEM, and the details of those will be at the end of this slideshow. Oh, I've gone past one. So Blight Watch is another part of the fight against the blight. This uses Met Office forecast data to send you an alert whenever a Hutton criteria is forecast near your location. So I'm sure you're all aware and had to learn during basis, but a Hutton criteria occurs when there are 2 consecutive days with a minimum temperature of 10 degrees and at least 6 hours of relative humidity at 90%. So it'll send you alert, and it's important to understand that these warning indicators are based entirely on weather data, and we all know how variable that can be, and they're subject to change, but they're a useful heads up of the conditions that are forecast for the coming day. Now, the Blight Watch alerts do not constitute a recommendation to spray, but they will, give you an earlier warning and aid decisions around spray timings and sort of intervals and things like that. So I know David and Amber just touched on spot farms a little bit, what they are, but I think I'll just touch on them again because I think they're, one of the most important tools AHDB has. Now, the spot farms are a network of growers throughout the UK hosting research on their own farms, which is funded by us at AHDB. Now, some of the work aims to address the local challenges experienced by the growers, and in other cases, the farms host the sort of multi-site trials that take place across all the spot farms. Now, example of this, I'm not sure if you're aware, but in 2019 we had a large desiccation trial, which was a sort of fully replicated trial held at 6 sites across Britain, and 4 of those were the spot farms. And growers and agronomists were able to track progress at open days and field walks and things like that. And these are independent trials as well, so they aim to understand what the best practice and way forward is. In this case, the post the loss of dicot. Now, just a point I put there, which is aims. Now, I think that the main aims of this are actually really important, which is increasing productivity versus the risk of failure. So, it's an unfortunate fact that for many potato businesses and agronomists, that the risk of failure is simply too high to risk changing a system that works. People are scared to change because it's working all right at the moment, the way they're doing it. But, we are trying to give confidence to deliver that change. The spot farm steps in to offer agronomists and growers, a first look, if you like, and an insight into how new systems and practices can be implemented in our own farms and enterprises. And, ultimately to give the growers and yourselves that confidence to deliver the change. So we hope by attending these, you can take some points away and discuss them with your growers and adopt them on farms you look after. And I've just put a bit there, to learn more about these spot farms hosts and the results. Just visit the AHDB website and the strategic potato farms section. So this is the last of the tools, which is last but certainly not least the regional KEMs. So we are the KEMs in these areas. I probably should have put myself back on there because you've probably forgotten, but we want to work alongside you and help your growers. So all the tools mentioned, especially the spot farms, could be great opportunities for your growers and yourselves to look at the best practice and innovation moving forward. We all know the problems facing the industry at present. So let's work together face them and tackle them head on. And there's lots of different ways you could go from here, but the simplest is probably, if you think AHDB can help yourselves or your growers, just get in touch. Whether it be a spot farm host, storage advice, or market intelligence, please feel free to pick up the phone to one of us, and we'll always do our best, and if not, point you in the right direction. Finally, to find these tools, because I've mentioned all these tools and not really where to find them, but it's pretty simple. I've put the links there, but to be honest, the best way to do it is to go on Google and type in AHDB followed by the thing you want to find. So RB209, AHDB, RB209, storage tools, AHDB storage tools, and so on and so on. But apart from when you come to ourselves as the regional KMs, just type in AHDB Potatoes and scroll to the bottom of the page on the AHDB Potatoes website, and you'll find all our details there. So as promised, this is an image of the full range of tools. So please take a picture and save it or write them down. Now, there will be an updated tools document in the coming months available from the website. It's not available at the moment, unfortunately, as we are adding tools, removing some of them and updating them. But please keep an eye out for that. I've just highlighted there market intelligence, which is, I think, another important point. It's vital to keep up to date with all of the latest market information, and it's crucial for all in the potato industry. So the Potato Weekly provides a regular update on prices and markets in your region and sectors, and our analyst insight articles delve deeper into the domestic and international markets and things like that. And then second is webinars. Obviously at present we haven't been able to get out and about as much as we would have liked in a normal year. However, as you know, we have been offering a large series of webinars over the past and coming months to continue to support the industry. So please visit our website, click events at the top and filter down depending on what sector you'd like to learn about. And that's all from me. So thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to my presentation and David and Amber's. I hope you found it useful, and I will pass over to Antonia.
Thank you very much to our speakers. So that's Alex, Amber and David. It's just important to note that obviously, so coming into the world of agronomy can be really quite daunting. So I hope this morning we've actually given all you budding trainee agronomists some really good insight into what a rewarding career agronomy can be. Now I'm going to actually open the floor and ask if there are anybody who has any questions, and I have got a couple that have come through. So it's a question to all the KAMs here. You talk about potatoes being a way of life. What made you want to be involved in the industry? We'll start with David.
I think potatoes chooses you. No, actually, it's a really good question. And at the British Potato event in Harrogate that runs biannually, so 2021 will be the next year for it. Many years back, I met an old family friend from back in Scotland, and my background was predominantly livestock farming. And obviously I've went into farm management on a root crop farm, worked on a seed farm back in Scotland. But he basically said, you know why you're in potatoes, don't you? And I looked a bit blank. He said, well, potatoes are the closest thing you get to livestock in the arable world. Because with cereals, you drill them, you maybe herbicide in the autumn, and then you leave them for the winter. But once potatoes in the field, you must check them at least once a week, if not more often. And they're more work when they're inside than when they're outside. And at no point can you go on holiday for a fortnight and leave them unattended. So that's always kind of stuck with me a bit. And that's the thing, yeah, I'm extremely passionate about it. It's a great industry. It's quite a small industry. But yeah, you can, there's so much variation, and it's a good challenge. So I think that's my answer.
Mm. Oh, thank you. And so what, Amber, made you want to be involved in the industry?
Well, I went to Harper Adams and I did my degree in food, and decided when I was doing that I wanted to go into fresh produce. I got a job at Branston on their graduate scheme and really enjoyed it. Got to meet a load of people in the industry. And I also met my husband, who is a potato farmer. So I eat, sleep and breathe potatoes, I guess. But I think the bit I love about the potato industry is that it's small enough for one person to have an impact and to really get to know the industry and the people in it. I think working at AHDB has been fantastic because I get to see so many people, so many things going on, and I get to feel like I can do something to help lots of people at the same time. So yeah, I mean, it's a funny industry, as David said. It gets into your blood, into your bones. But there we go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can totally reflect on that myself, actually, and obviously, Alex, being our newest member of the KE team, what brought you into the industry of potatoes?
Yeah, no, that's good question. I think for me, I've always been interested in potatoes because growing up, my first ever job was on a potato farm. I think, and then from then on, I worked on farms all the time when I was at college and school and things like that, doing all sorts of jobs from grading, stacking, planting, spraying, all those bits and bobs. And then obviously I moved into a bit of an agronomy role and trials role, and I was looking after the potatoes at Harper Adams in the crop trials. So that got me interest going. And in terms of the fertilizer sales, it was always the main staple of my business. So I was always involved in the potato trade, that side. So I think, and then obviously I've moved to AHDB, and I think because of the variety of the potato industry, as David explained in his complicated slide, there's so much involved. It's quite a challenge, and there's always something going on. And I guess I've always enjoyed a challenge. So yeah.
No, thank you very much. We have one more question that's just come in. Who makes up the steering groups at the spot farms, and do agronomists have any input into the work that's been done? Who wants to go for this one? We'll start with Amber this time.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think. On my steering group, I've currently got 4 agronomists. I've got the 2 agronomists because we're based on 2 separate farms at RJ&AE Godfrey. I've got 3 agronomists that look after those farms on the steering group, and I've also got an agronomist from a bit further north, John Sarup. He's part of our steering group as well. So yeah, there's loads of room for agronomists on steering groups, and it's great to get more than one because you get like a variety of opinions. I've also got people from industry, so I've got David Nelson from Branston who does a lot of agronomy and works on that side of things for them. And I've got a local grower as well. So it's wide and it's varied and it's brilliant because it brings a lot of opinions and a lot of ideas to the table.
Yes,
so there's definitely room, definitely scope.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we have a question here that's asking, how does the AHDB support potato growers during the uncertainties of coronavirus and the changes in demand? So, Amber, you're smiling at me.
Yeah. I would say in terms of KE, we've tried our very best to keep it going and keep producing work. So we've been doing our webinars in place of spot farm events over the summer. We've obviously got our events program that we're doing over the winter, which we're trying to keep as full as possible. Our MI team and our marketing teams have been frantic. I mean, it's not just Corona, is it? We've got Brexit coming up. And everything else. So we've got our market intelligence team that have been doing analyst insights throughout the Corona and lockdown periods, looking specifically at the specific markets and what's going on with them and trying to keep growers and industry abreast of exactly everything that's going on. We also reintroduced our Bud the Spud campaign, which wasn't a planned activity, but because we knew that everything going on was just unprecedented, we had to do something. We react quickly, I guess. So we brought Bud the Spud back, if you can say it, Bud the Spud. Over the summer, he made an appearance over the summer for a marketing campaign, and we're looking to do more marketing over the winter as well now. Yeah, so a lot really.
Yeah, well, I just had a fantastic question come in, and this is to each of you. What do the KAMs think that the potato industry can realistically do to improve their environmental credentials? They often get a bad rap for soil. Now, I'll start with this actually, because I know that we are actually running a whole series of soils webinars based specifically around the potato industry, and we've just had an introductory webinar, which is now on the events web page, past web's event page, and we'll be running a whole series. I do believe the next one's in January and February. So going to David next. So what do you think the KAM, as a KAM, you think that the potato industry can realistically do to improve environmental credentials?
That is, yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I was just doing the sums in my head there, and as of January next year, there'll be me going into my 16th year, one way or another, in the potato industry. Yeah, and it's I've seen quite a few changes in those 15 years already. That even 10 years ago, there was far more people cropping rather than farming, taking land wherever, literally getting a crop off it. Not quite, it's harsh to say, at the detriment of the field, but that there wasn't as much long-term planning. And people are becoming more and more aware of these challenges. There's a lot of work happening behind the scenes on flower strips, on headlands, beneficial management, and field selection is going to be key. Amber obviously showed the data earlier of the planting v price. At the moment, the price it isn't great, largely driven by the lack of demand due to coronavirus. But I think a lot of people will be far more scrutinising their field selection, and it's something that we'd like to undertake more trial work on. It is the soil health side of potatoes, because so I know certainly at Spot Scotland, at the last farm, they ended up reducing their cultivation costs because they stopped doing what they'd always done. And back when I started out, I remember we had the agronomists come out and tell us to lift our cultivators out the ground. And we were convinced we had to go deeper to get the amount of tilth we needed. But we were creating a pan underneath, that the roots were struggling, and then water logging. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of increased attention to detail that may come slightly at a reduced area, would be my thought.
Okay, and Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, like David said, we can't just keep doing what we're doing. I think applications of fertilizer and pesticide has got to become more specialized, and we got to look into the research more of how to achieve, the maximum efficacy without putting more on. And I think coming to the conservation strips, more and more is being done in terms of sort of beneficials and conservation strips within potato crops and the surrounding borders. So it's forever changing, but we've got, like you say, the soils webinar. We've got some good stuff coming up on that, and we're looking to take it to the spot farms as well. So yeah.
That's right. Yes, we are actually looking at doing cultivations and some machinery work actually over the next year. And these are all these topics will be included in these webinars and podcasts. I have one question, which I'll direct to each of you. And it says, what do each of the KAMs think is the greatest opportunity for the potato industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And Alex, I'm going to go to you first because you're the newest.
That's a tricky one. That is a tricky one. It's sort
of like, what's the greatest opportunity for you and for the potato industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the greatest opportunity is being a potato producer in a group of people that's declining. Well, it's stabling now, but has been declining year on year, and with the imports and exports of potatoes all across Europe, I think the greatest opportunity will be pushing the boundaries on becoming more sustainable within this country. So less exports, less imports, and actually producing and using our own potatoes in the UK. And it's something I think we need to push for, and that could be a great opportunity.
Yeah. And Amber, over to you for that question.
I'm going to build on Alex's point and just say that this last year has been a nightmare, but it could also really help the industry to sort of focus its minds on what's important when it comes to food. And I think British produce, British produced food, where there is security in supply, is something that the public ideally should be a bit more aware of now and hold up as more important. We produce a fantastic crop, one of the best in the world, and there's no reason really that we should be importing as much as we do. So I think consumers have quite a lot of power to influence, what's actually brought into the country by how they buy. And I know a lot of our growers out there were selling potatoes on the gate. We did it at the farm. We gave potatoes away, and I hope that the public can see that as now it's their turn to maybe repay that in kind by supporting British and buying British. So I would say look at COVID almost in that sense as an opportunity, because you might have just got a foot in the door where there wasn't before.
Absolutely. And David, what's your input on this?
Yeah, I suppose it's to round the circle on everything that Alex and Amber have said, especially focusing on the horror that's gone before in COVID. One of the big things we saw, as Amber touched on, was the increase in sale of just dirty bagged potatoes. And in addition to the Bud the Spud marketing campaign, we have a lovepotatoes.co.uk website where we have recipes and tips and other things. And one of the most popular articles we put out this year was how to store potatoes at home, because a lot of households were suddenly buying potatoes for the first time because there was this stockpiling that happened and people were doing it. And I'd like to think we've made people fall in love with potatoes again. We already have a nearly 95% market penetration with potatoes. So I know a lot of people would like to see more glitzy advertising, but we're already getting into 95% of households. It's then making them make potatoes part of a staple meal and diet, where I think, going forward, we need to really be consumer driven, grow what they want, what tastes nice, perhaps less so than driven by the industry and the visuals. It's got to all be about taste and flavour, and I really encourage people to enjoy potatoes.
Lovely. That actually just brings me on to the most fabulous question which has just been asked by our audience today, and that is, what's the KEM's favourite way to eat potatoes? So I'll start. Mine's potato dauphinoise, because I'm a fatty.
Yeah,
David?
Well, I was going to go with the good old jacket potato, but then my wife found it first, but it's also one that love potatoes is Hasselback potatoes.
Oh, yum.
So yeah, like a jacket potato with little ridges cut in them. Yeah, skin on.
Amber, what's yours?
Get the flavour.
I think, there's so many ways, aren't there? I would say not much beats a really, really good, well-cooked roast potato. As long as it's done with some sort of animal fat involved, because that adds all the flavour as well.
Alex, what about you? What's your favourite?
I think I'm going to go down the traditional baked. Lunchtime over the winter months is just tuna in a baked potato.
Yeah, I'm thinking roast chicken and roast potatoes. Actually, me. No, I think we've got one more question here, and this is actually quite a serious one. And basically, this is to do in relation to what would an agronomist need to do when he or she approaches a grower on rented land versus owned land. Now, I think this is probably to do with, what are the things that does an agronomist actually have to look out for if he's actually looking to grow a potato crop on rented land versus owned land? Who would like to answer this one first?
I mean, I guess
Go on, Alex.
Kick it off. I think from agronomist's point of view, you've got to do your history on the field. So you want to look at what they've grown in it before. Obviously, if this farmer likes to rent out his land, it could be in a bad way. So for one, I'd look at pests in there. So I'd be doing my PCN tests. I've been doing my nutrition tests. Looking out at the problems there. I'd also be looking if there was grass in the rotation, and depending on what market you want to go for, if it's your backing market and you're looking at sort of earworm pressure, wireworm pressure there, and then also I'd go in with the traditional spade method and have a look at the soil structure there, and really delve into that side of things, and if it is suitable, the field, then I think we've really got to pay attention on looking after that soil even post potatoes. So, perhaps recommend to your growers to really focus on looking after it after. So maybe put a cover crop in or something after the potatoes have come off to try and reinstate some structure. Because if you leave potato fields in a state, you're not going to get them again. And that could become a big problem. So that's the start.
David?
Yeah, again, agree completely with everything Alex is saying, and a bit of self-promotion for myself. Actually, later this week, I'm presenting again on natural varietal resistance to late blight. Alex touched on it earlier with the fight against blight service, but that's another thing to consider. If you're on rented land, depending how far away that land is from home, something as simple as variety selection. If you've got a variety that's got a very low foliar blight resistance rating, that'll be a higher risk, and perhaps would you be later in getting to that if you have a delay for your blight sprays. And it's thinking about the maturity of the variety. If you want to be clear from that land, I know through my career of various farmers have different rental agreements. A lot have clauses in a late penalty. If they're not cleared by a certain time, they pay more. But some landlords even offer a rebate if they can get the field cleared quicker. So yeah, it's very much thinking about what variety goes to which field, when you'll get to it to harvest, how easy you can get to it for inputs, etc. And that's the thing, back to the circle of the farming life. A potato agronomist is involved just as much out with the growing crop as they are within, I would say.
And I was just going to add to that, David, do you actually think that the role of an agronomist is changing, and that do they need to advise more on machinery, for example, in terms of the cost of aspects of growing potatoes?
It's one thing that it's wrong to joke about, but it makes me smile that a lot of arable farmers consider themselves to be agronomists and are happy to make decisions and advise and choose machinery. But with the risk reward factor that was touched on earlier and the huge costs involved, a lot of potato growers are looking for advice, and certainly there are agronomists that will do a little bit of potato agronomy on the side, but generally you are in. And at Spot North in 2019, Amber and Will Gagg, the host there, arranged for a potato flail topper demonstration day where we had 4 manufacturers and growers could come along, advise as well, and see how they're performing to really give that best technical advice. Because with less than 6% being input costs, there's huge amount others can do. And historically, a lot of agronomists would stop involvement once the harvest has been through, but then the crop can then go into store for 8 or 9 months when, as Alex showed with the disease and defect poster, there's a huge amount to be learned and managed in store also.
And Amber, do you have anything to add to that and that particular point?
Yeah, I think maybe if we look from more of an environmental perspective with everything that's going on at the moment, obviously there was announcements yesterday from government, and I think the whole of agriculture needs to be looking at partnerships and building relationships and moving away from sort of 1-year rental agreements where the land is used and abused and then we move on to something else. We need to be building relationships with landowners and with land renters, and they need to be working towards longer term, more sustainable working arrangements. So Alex said whether you do something after the crop or do something before the crop to a bit of soil recovery, something like that. So I think as far as the question goes, I think maybe going forward there should be less of a difference between what you do on rented land versus owned land, because you should be looking at it as land and how you work throughout the whole rotation rather than just year on year. So yeah, I guess as a forward view, that might be a bit of something from me there.
That's lovely. Well, thank you very much. I'm actually going to bring this webinar to a close now. So may I say a big thank you to all our presenters, and also thank you to all our viewers, and thank you for the most excellent questions. I'm still salivating about my potato dauphinoise. So I hope this has actually been a really good induction to you budding agronomists. And I just need to reiterate, if you do ever have any questions, or you feel as though you need a guiding hand within the early parts of your career, you can always contact us. All our details are actually on the website for this event. And finally, it brings me to say, please remember to apply for your basis and NROSO points by completing the form, and you will need to enter the unique code shown on the screen now. We hope you have enjoyed the Agronomy Week so far for this content for the rest of the day. There is another Agronomist induction session happening tomorrow, taking place at 9 o'clock. If you have any questions, like I said, do please feel free to contact us. You will receive a survey immediately after this, so please do take the time to fill it in. We always want to hear your thoughts. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for listening today from all of us at AHDB Potatoes. Thank you very much.